Shahnameh on the Creation of the World, Part 4 with Omid Arabian. Salam Omid Jan, thank you for
Salam,
joining us for
my
another
pleasure.
part of the creation of the world. Small topic, just no big deal. So in the last lesson, we kind of got these visuals of all these elements coming together to form what we know of as the earth and the world and lightness and stars. And I think let's get right into our next part.
Perfect. So the last part, as the stars appeared and light started to kind of shine brightly over this dark earth, he continues from there, Ferdowsi, with verse 17. He says, همی بر شد آتش فرود آمد آب همی گشت گرد زمین آفتاب. Let's start with the second half of that verse first, if I may. So he says, the sun, or the light of the sun, aftab, right, uh, started to turn around the earth, revolve around the earth. And again, this is back to the geocentric model, where we now know it's the other way around. The earth revolves around the sun. But back then, they believed that all the planets and all the stars, including the sun, revolved around the earth. So he says, the sun began to continually kind of circle the earth, right? And fire kept going back to the first part. Fire rose upward and water flowed down. In other words, fire again refers to the sun in this case, right? That kind of took its place in the sky as it started to turn around the earth, but also rains. The rains came, right? Which is a very important part of the life of the earth. So again, he's taking us through all of these necessary elements through which then other kinds of life can appear, right? And especially now with the appearance of the sunlight and of that furud miyad, water that kind of descends, furud amadan is to descend. So with these two things in place, the next thing again is now giyarost با چند گونه درخت. It says by virtue of these things, that's implied here. Giya or giyah are plants, right? And rost, we said last time, means rostan is to grow. So giyaros, the plants began to grow. با چند گونه درخت, چند گونه, many or several forms of or several kinds of درخت, of trees. So the plants and the trees begin to grow, and به زیر اندر آمد سرانشان ز برق. He refers to the plants and the trees, and he says their heads, سرانشان, their heads, به زیر آمد, kind of were bowing down. Yeah. ز بخت. Bacht is like fortune or fate. So he says it was their fate for their heads to be bowed down. So what might Ferdowsi be talking about? Perhaps here he's kind of personifying the plants and the trees, and he's saying that fate, like the very process, the inherent process of their existence, kind of declares that their crowns bend down. In other words, not just literally, sometimes you see plants where the top of them are bending down, but more symbolically or more metaphorically, they humble themselves, right? They bow down to this cosmic order of existence, right? And also, as we'll see in the hierarchy of creation, plants are kind of considered in the lower rungs of creation, right? They're the less evolved kind of entities, even though plants are amazing and very important. But in this process of creation, they are kind of a little bit more in a humble position, right? So all of this can be kind of understood as part of the idea of how Ferdowsi says fate would have it that their heads would kind of be bent down or bowed down. And he explains, he says, ببالد ندارد جز این نیرویی نپوید چو پویندگان هر سویی. He's talking about the plants and the trees from the previous verse, and he says, ببالد, بالیدن is to just grow again, right? And maybe to grow proudly, but in that sense, he says, that's what they do, ببالد, right? ندارد جز این نیروی. Niru is power. And so ندارد, it doesn't have جز این, other than that, any power. The power of plants, relatively to other kinds of creatures, is simply to grow upward, right? And he explains further, napuyad. Napuyad means they don't walk around, right? They don't move in this horizontal direction. Puyandegan. Puyandegan are creatures that can move in these horizontal directions, right? Unlike those creatures, it doesn't have that power to harsui, to go in any direction. It only grows this way, right? That's the movement of plants. Relatively speaking, of course, we see trees kind of spreading sometimes their branches, but he's speaking in a way kind of more poetically and comparing the power that plants have to what other creatures like animals have, which is then to move in different directions. So he's taking us through the steps of, one could even say, kind of almost like an evolution like process, right? That different creatures appear, and each one or each class of creature has a different and a greater sense of power or movement or something that the other one lacks. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Great. و از آن پس verse 20 چو جنبنده آمد پدید همه رستنی زیر خویش آورید. Now he explains, he says, و از آن پس, after that, pass as on, we say, which means subsequently after that. چو جنبنده آمد پدید, چو here means when or as. جنبنده, جنبیدن is to again move about. So جنبنده exactly is a creature that has the ability to move about, yeah, in different directions. آمد پدید appeared or was created or showed up, right? So now, subsequently, when these other kinds of creatures that can move about came into existence, همه رستنی زیر خویش آورید. What did they do? They brought all the rostani, here again, the plants. They brought all the plants under their dominion. So, in a way, we could say this is a reference to how plants became fodder for the animals. The animals appeared, what we call the animal class, and the plants became kind of their food. They had dominion over the plants, in a way. Yeah. And so now he describes how he understands the animals, right? He says, verse 21, خور خواب و آرام جوید همی و از آن زندگی کام جوید همی. There are some really good vocabulary words here. Khor, which is from khordan, right? We have also the word khoresh, right, which means stew. But generally, before it became stew, it just meant anything that you can eat, basically. Khoresh.
So you're not in the Khoresht camp?
Oh, absolutely not. Khoresh is.
Oh, is it wrong? Okay.
It's a fun word, but technically it's khoresh. Yeah.
Oh, is it incorrect? I don't know. I had no opinion on it, but there's always a controversy.
Yeah.
So they're just wrong.
No, and again, remember, language is as we make it, right? So if both you and I understand Khoresh, then it is a word and it's not wrong, right?
Okay. So what you're saying is another one of these words that you don't think about very often, but Khoresh is to eat. And when you think about the root of the word, it's like, oh, obviously Khoresh.
Exactly. Khordan. So technically and logically, it makes much more sense to say Khoresh, right? That which is kind of the subject of eating, that which you eat. So, but Ferdowsi kind of shortens that to khor, which is again here means khordan, right? It wants to eat, right? And khab is sleep, right? And aram is aramesh, which is kind of peace, right?
This is all I want to. Khoro khaba aram. I'm gonna put that I'm gonna make a poster. That's our new what is that? Live, life, let, you know what I'm talking about?
Live, laugh, love. Yeah.
Yes, live, laugh, love. This should be khor khab aram.
Khor khab aram.
That's a new business idea for you.
You're kind of branding yourself as an animal, according to Ferdowsi.
Oh, that's fine.
Because as we see, kind of when he gets to humans, there's something added to this, right? There's something more than this. To be human means a little bit more than that. So he's very specifically making a point here that it's really the animals that are
Got
just
it.
content with only this, right?
Oh, okay, okay.
But still, nevertheless, I'm with you. I think those are wonderful things to have. Yeah. So he says, "Horo khab aram juyad." Juyad or juidan is to seek, and hami always or all the time. So the animals, this is what they seek, right? To eat and then to sleep peacefully, right? This is kind of their the limits of what they are interested in, right? And وزان زندگی کام جوید همی. Calm uh, uh, is a word that means kind of their like it's their pleasure, right? Something that is pleasurable. So they seek pleasure, right? Calm juyad, azan zendegi, in this kind of life, in that kind of life, right? A life of just eating and sleeping restfully, right? This is kind of their limits of what they are happy with, what they seek, what they feel is their aspiration in a way in life. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but now he makes a contrast, right? He starts to say, well, what are these animals kind of lacking, at least according to Ferdowsi, right? This is again no disrespect to animals and animal lovers, but this is just kind of his way of starting to lead up to humans, right? He says, نگویا زبان و نجویا خرد ز خار و ز خاشاک تن پرورد. He's talking about the animals. He says these are creatures who guya zaban, they don't have tongues, right? Zaban to speak, right? Animals we know now they have their own language that they speak to each other, but from the human perspective, they don't have the ability to speak the way we do. So na guya zaban, no tongue to really speak, right? Va and na juya kherad, they do not seek kherad, right? Kherad is really one of the most important concepts in Shahnameh.
Hmm.
Ferdowsi has an entire section that is in the praise of kherad. And kherad is not an easy word to kind of translate briefly into any
Hmm.
other language, but it refers to kind of this very, very ancient wisdom in Shahnameh. This wisdom that's almost eternal and primordial and timeless.
Mm.
And uh, uh, us human beings, we'll see later, have access to this kharat, right? We can tap into this ancient wisdom and seek it, right? Juya kharat is that which seeks that wisdom, right? And seeks to tap into that ancient, eternal, divine wisdom. And he says animals, not only do they not have the tongue to speak, they also don't have this urge or this instinct or this ability to go and seek that kharat, to tap into it,
But
right?
that's not a word that we use in current conversation, is it? Kharad?
Well, we use it in many different senses, actually. It's a little bit formal, but it is very much part of modern Farsi. We say so and so is very kharadmand or ba kharat, right? And we use that to mean many different things now. It could just mean they're very intelligent, or they're very smart, or they're very wise, or they have a lot of knowledge. They've read a
Mm.
lot of books, they have the ability to reason things out. These are all different ways that we use the idea of somebody who is ba kherad or por kherad.
So maybe like a good professor would be Bakhirat?
Yes, exactly,
Would a
exactly.
politician be Bakhirat if they're wise ever?
Don't get me started on that.
Well, and how does this relate to the concept of, is it the word far? Is that what they say?
Far is a different concept, but also very much part of Shahnameh. Far is more kind of translatable as glory. It's a very kind of uh, hard to grasp and hard to pin down quality that is bestowed from source, from the divine, onto some characters in Shahnameh, and others who don't have it are always kind of seeking it, right? But it is a quality of glory. I would say, a gloriousness.
So far is something that is bestowed upon you from above, but khirad
Yes.
is something you seek.
Yes, it's something that you seek and you tap into.
Juya khirad.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And so that kharat, that wisdom, at least according to Ferdowsi, is not available to these animal creatures, right? And of course, by also by kind of deduction to the plants, right? So, but he's setting up the stage, obviously, right? He's saying, but these animals, they don't have access to that. They don't seek it. All they want is zakharo, zakhashak, tan parvarad. Khar means kind of thorn or perhaps like thorny bushes, and khashak is like undergrowth, right? Kind of this basic kind of plant life, right? So tan parvardan is to kind of nurture your body. So he sees animals as more about that kind of material, corporeal kind of pursuit rather than the pursuit of something higher beyond just the material, corporeal aspects of existence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And he kind of gives them a little out. He gives the animals first. He says in verse 23, he says, نداند بد و نیک فرجام کار نخواهد از او بندگی کردگار. He's still talking about these creatures, the animals. And he says, نداند, they don't know, or it doesn't know, a creature like that does not know bad or neek, bad and good, right? Bad or nike, bad and good of farjam. Farjam is like consequences, right? Kind of the end result. And so farjam kar is the consequences of actions, right? So he's telling us that in his view, animals are not able to understand or think about the good or bad consequences of their actions, right? They don't have this capacity. And maybe by virtue of that, we get to the second half of that verse. نخواهد از او بندگی کردگار. Kerdgar, again, is the creator or that force that conducts the universe. Yeah. And he says, this entity, we could call it the divine or source or whatever you like, از او بندگی نمیخواد. And it doesn't expect this creature to be a good servant of the divine because it doesn't even understand the notions of good and bad, right and wrong, and the consequences of its own actions. And so, because it doesn't have that capacity, it is not expected to live, right, in service of the divine, right, in service of what we call the highest good, because it doesn't even understand the difference between good and bad and the consequences of things, right? Again, this is all set up and leading up to what Ferdowsi is now really talking about eventually, which is us human beings, right? The implication here is that maybe we do have some of these capabilities, and so we can get to that slowly but surely.
Wonderful. Okay, well, we'll get to that, I hope, in the next lesson.
I hope so too. Yeah, we have about 7 verses left or so, so should get there.
Perfect. We will leave it here on this lesson, and then we will come back with the thrilling conclusion of the creation of the world in our next lesson.
Looking
Okay.
forward.
Mamnunam.
Merci,
Omida.
Leila Jan. Always a pleasure.